And welcome to your daily dose for today. Today, what is it? July 23rd. Man, it's almost August. July 23rd, 2020. Joining me is a man who has some ideas and has hit me up on a email about a really excited premise that he has that he believes he's done his research, and I'm excited to hear more about. Please welcome Nick George. How are you, Nick?
Great. How you doing, Sam? Thank you very much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, brother. So, we were supposed to have you on last week. We had a couple misconnections, but luckily we're making it happen today, and that's all that really matters. So where do you want to begin, brother?
Well, I don't want to go back too far because we don't have much time, but I'd like to say that I've been researching cognitive dissonance and trying to understand why people don't want to question things beyond a certain point, and I've always felt that there's an underlying programming there. I couldn't tell if it was just human nature or something that was instilled in us. And so I started going back because of the conflicts I was having with my own family and their religious understandings, and trying to understand why I couldn't reach them about certain truths that I'd come to. And I'm starting to find that all the ecclesiastical networks or conduit that we're given, be it mosque or synagogue or any of the 30,000 plus denominations of Catholic and Protestant Christianity, are all controlled by the same satanic hierarchy.
Dude, now we're there. Here we are. Dude, I'm loving this already. Keep going. I'm loving this.
Well, that's where it all led. But the clues that some of the breadcrumbs that started to get dropped were, I kept running into this figure named James when I was researching Josephus. And when I was researching an argument that early church father Origen was having with Josephus after Josephus was dead, Origen was kind of having it with himself and with his surrounding peers, trying to figure out why James seemed to be the most important person in the first century Judea, according to this parallel historian that was writing at the same time that the New Testament was penned. And he was curious, Origen was curious as to why there was nothing about this in the New Testament that we're given. Nothing about James, nothing about his original assassination attempt by Paul and the high priest Ananias, who conspired to push James off of the pinnacle of the Jewish temple in the early 40s AD. They had him get up there to speak to the Passover crowds who were getting riled up, and they thought that he could calm them. Well, the speech took a turn for the righteous, and Paul had Ananias push him off the temple, and he broke a leg at least, maybe two. And then 5,000 of his followers carried him out to the Jordan, where they started the Messianic movement under four different sects of the Essenes, which were all vegan.
Hold on. Okay, you got some awesome information here. So who is James?
James was the original teacher of righteousness, or son of Zadok, Z-O-D-O-K, or Z-A-D-O-K, which was considered to be the embodiment of God on earth, the Holy Spirit, and anybody who was a son of this righteousness, or Zadok, was their holy teacher. And there's been a few over time, but the one that was squarely called the Messiah, the one that would come after John and baptize with fire, was James the Just. And the Bible turns him into James the Less, the brother of Yeshua, which Yeshua wasn't even a human being. It was their understanding of the Holy Spirit. It was the teaching. And it was very easy for Rome to turn it into a living blood human. But then the Bible takes a satanic step further and says that the Essenes were practicing something where they drank the blood and ate the body of Yeshua, which is just a slap in the face of everything that they stood for. They wouldn't even wear wool, but the New Testament paints John the Baptist as wearing animal skins. So by the very definition of adversarialist, upside down teaching, Satanism, that's what we're dealing with. And so
now, when you get into Satanism, I have this discussion a lot with people. And to me, it goes along the lines of what you're basically talking about is a very long game psyop being done, right? Psychological operation.
Chess.
And, and I, in my research and in my instincts that I trust very much, I have come to believe that Satanism is a psyop itself. Now, just hear me out. So they've basically taken the best of Hinduism, right? Which is like, we are all gods, one, blah, 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 connect with everything, one consciousness, right? and then they added all their dark art stuff from their what I believe is the dark arts, which is the Babylonian,
Yes, the mystery school stuff.
yeah. But not, I mean, like, I don't even know it's mystery. It's just like, it's like weird because the occult, like when I say something's pagan, right, it has this negative connotation to it. But to me, like, paganism really is just ancient knowledge that was demonized a long time ago. Well, for me, dude, it's like, it's just this Saturn worship, this whatever it's called. It's Saturnist.
Exactly.
Like that's to me like the real dark arts, and that they never wanted. And like I didn't learn about Saturn worship till I was about 44 years old.
Same here.
You know, and like, but I knew Satanism early because it was like shoved down our throats. And these guys who are the face of Satanism, they're all like theater dorks who just like they all were just like in AV club in high school or the band, marching band, or they were taking pictures for the yearbook staff, and now they find this thing, and for some reason it makes them feel dangerous. Yeah. And I just think it's dork stuff. I mean, but the real darkness is this Saturn worship, in which I believe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you might be saying the same thing, just using different words.
Yeah. What bakes my noodle is that the people that the 5,000 were trying to get away from when they made this messianic movement, they were trying to get away from a religion that seemed to worship the same Saturnic understanding that the Romans did. And now how did two organizations that were supposedly fighting to the death in misunderstanding of each other both worship Shamash on the Sabbath, Saturn's day, and then the Romans were Saturnalia worshipers.
Yes, dude. There we go. What's that word?
It's the great sun festival, Saturnalia, which has
Saturnalia.
What does Saturn have to do with the sun is, a question that only the adept today pursue and the profane don't even want to look at.
Well, I mean, there is depending on how long you think man has been around and its many civilizations, there was a notion that at some point Saturn was in near the sun, and that they worshipped Saturn as the sun. And
it may have been the object that warmed us in place of the thing that we see now. It may have incubated us earlier.
A whole different rabbit hole.
Yeah, they don't want anybody to know this. The sad thing is that people like in my family that I love very much are at the very lowest level of this ecclesiastical conduit. And they hit a glass ceiling when I try to introduce new information.
Well, that's your problem right there.
That's what drives me to keep going.
You can't give knowledge to those who do not seek it. When they ask you about it, that's when you tell them about it. But, it's like, I don't know how long you've been on this journey in your life. So I can't tell you where you are and what you have to do. But for me, man, I mean, this journey for me has only been 4 years, right? I've always been a conspiracy theorist, but like the deep, deep, deep dives, it's only been 4 years, but very early I was like, you can't convince anybody anything. And then, dude, we just dropped this new episode, and I hate to say it because there are friends or families, but some people are just NPC. They're just players, characters in the simulation that aren't meant to go that deep.
Right. Well, in the future, I'd like to come back and talk to you about biological weapons and the experiments that have been aerosolized over human population groups since the 1950s. And I think what we're experiencing
we can get into that on another day because I'll have you back because you're already kicking ass. But I want to know, let's get back to what you're saying. Okay. I know everyone's like, Sam, shut up. So I will.
No.
So just get into, this guy, James, they
take him out to the wilderness, they heal him. And these people are known as the healers, mind, body, spirit. They knew a lot of secret stuff going all the way back to Plato. I'm sorry, not Plato.
Now he's James the what?
James the Just. James the Just. He practiced a lot of the same teachings of Pythagoras and Daniel. He was the one that held to the law, the natural law, better than anybody. And funny thing about this, an ex-Satanist by the name of Mark Passio has an incredible seminar on natural law. If anybody wants to understand what the Essenes were talking about when they talked about trying to live in balance with natural law, Mark went all the way through the Jesuit priesthood. Then he went through Satanism, and he kept hitting these glass ceilings and then shattering them. And he realized that both were part of a false dichotomy, a Hegelian dialect that keeps people trapped spiritually. And James was kind of realizing the same thing when he escaped the Jewish temple and went out to the Jordan with the 5,000. And they lived probably what was one of the best communal lifestyles that has ever been in existence, rather other than maybe the Magi of Persia or the Native Americans. And we know very little about the Essenes. What we do know is that they could not have worn animal skins. And the Bible does a real hack job talking about them. But while he was out there, he did several things to piss off Paul. Paul obviously wanted him dead. They had a lot of fights over, are you saved by faith alone, which is what Paul preached. And James was like, oh, hell no, that's bullshit. Your faith is dead without works. And so Paul really wanted him dead so they could replace this understanding with a more pig-like understanding. And what a lot of people don't know is that Jesus, one understanding of Jesus, if you break it down in Latin, is earth pig. And
yeah, I mean, how does that go when you're talking to your Christian friends?
I don't even tell
Jesus
them.
earth pig.
I don't even tell them because, that's at worst. At best, it means hail Zeus. And there's even a thing about Isa or Isis. So it could mean all three of those, but it has nothing to do with James the Just or the Essene teaching in the wilderness.
Now, when Buddhists say that a guy with that name is registered in their temple, what is your thoughts on that?
I think that the guy that they're talking about is the same guy that visited the Hindus.
Yes.
And picked up their teachings. And I think that that's who we know today. And I think he's gone by more than one name, was Apollonius of Tyana.
Apollonius of Tyana.
Apollonius of Tyana, one of the most interesting characters you'll ever read about. He was deeply involved in the teachings of Pythagoras and the Essenes. They did recognize him as a teacher of righteousness. And some people think that Titus and Vespasian Caesar used him as their personal seer, and he helped write the New Testament for them and create the character of Jesus that we have today. And he got a lot of his understandings that were so far outside of the understanding of the area through his travels, going to those different places. And Philostratus writes a compilation. All of his works were mutilated after in the 200 years while Christianity was being built by Rome. I don't think that they wanted us to know about the writings of Thomas, but Philostratus put them all back together in a nice compilation that helps you understand the character of Apollonius. And then some people think that Apollonius entered onto the scene in the New Testament as Simon Magus and became one of the great teachers in Jerusalem. But that's a whole nother line of
what,
research.
The guy that might be Jesus?
Well, some people mistook the Simon Magus for Jesus, and Simon took the cross from Jesus, and some say that Simon never gave it back and was actually the one that took the bullet. But all of the guys.
Well, there is that discussion that somebody else was crucified and it wasn't Jesus.
When the only evidence we have of anybody taking the position of that was Simon. And the only evidence of anybody in the Bible taking the role of the seer of Vespasian, who might have written the New Testament, is Apollonius of Tyana. So it gets really convoluted. But the one thing that you can stay on solid ground with is James survived, had a limp after almost being killed by Paul. He comes back in the 60s. And there's
literally the 60s, literally.
The 60s AD.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's 62 or 68, but he's got a hell of a following at this point. He's operating in great contrast to Paul and what Paul's trying to design with a false cork to put in the genie bottle of the Messianic movement, which was what Paul was trying to do, was design a final Messiah that would end the Messianic revolution for his Herod family. He was
Messianic. When we hear that, people will start thinking about Freemasonry, right?
Oh, well, no, I mean Messianic, like Messiah.
Oh, Messianic, not Messianic. My apologies. Right. I am stupid.
If we had more time, though, I'd love to get into how the same people that created the story that we have today, the turning upside down of James's teaching. Oh, let me finish. So James comes back.
Dude, listen, I'm going to have you back. I might even have you on the big show because I like what you're saying. Here's the whole thing, dude. No, we'll talk about this off here, but go on. I want to talk to you later about my thoughts on a lot of things, but go on.
Most important thing is that James was the most important person of the first century Judea, according to all the other historians of the time. Hegesippus, Eusebius, Josephus, the writings in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the MMT document, the War document, the Damascus document. If you read all of those, you'll find out that the New Testament is extremely isolated and a hodgepodge of creation by the Romans. But
isn't that crazy that the Romans put together this group, these people's religion? And, it's like, dude, you're clicking a lot of things for me right now, because I've been saying this forever. And I talk to Jews about this, and I love Jews, and they're wonderful people. And I talk to them about how, like, dude, there's these group of people. Whenever you talk to Jews about the synagogue of Satan, right? You see them tighten up, and they're like, and you're like, you're not listening to me, man. I'm trying to tell you that these people that they're talking about are not of the Judaish faith. And
they're wearing the Star of Remphan and Moloch, and it clearly says you can't do that. It also says you can't have your own nation. That's the biggest abomination to their own God, would be to have their own nation, but they're just
But see, that goes back to like what we're talking about right here, which is straight up, Jesuits. I mean, you're talking about Roman Catholic, which
they're turning upside down truth, making the impermissible permissible. Anyway, I want to do the death of James. So he comes back in the 60s strong, and there's this weird hiccup where one Caesar's down and out, and they're in a lame duck situation. The other one's in a chariot on his way to town, so there's nobody running Rome at the moment. And so an illegal Sanhedrin is called by Paul and the high priest. I can't remember the name of I think it was Ananias or somebody. They call an illegal Sanhedrin, and all decide at once to stone James to death for blasphemy, which is the way you kill a blasphemer. You don't crucify him. That's what you do to a robber or a treasonous against Rome thing. But you stone a blasphemer or someone who claims to be God. Oh, I remember he got on his knees in the Holy of Holy and prayed on Yom Kippur on behalf of the people for their sins. And only the high priest was supposed to do that, but everybody knew that James was even higher than that guy. So he thought he could get away with walking in there and doing it on Yom Kippur. Well, the high priesthood held the illegal Sanhedrin, shut him down, buried him up to his waist, and stoned him to death. Neither one of these assassinations are in the New Testament. All the evidence that you need that we've been given, BS, by a satanic organization that turns the truth upside down. But what I would love to do is fast forward to how the Pope created created Muhammad through the nun Khadijah.
Okay, dude. Now we're into it, brother. Now I want to start this because, on the Patreon, I don't know how many Muslims are there. I want to say this, and I say this all the time. This is not a condemning of anyone's beliefs. And, at the end of the day, it's all about love. Nobody is sitting here, but there have been talks openly that the royal family and the British and the Roman Catholics were involved in the creation of Islam.
So Khadijah was a very wealthy nun. This is all according to the confessions of Alberto Rivera, the ex-Jesuit priest who was nearly assassinated 3 times. They were finally successful killing him for bringing out this and other information. But the very wealthy nun Khadijah, whose husband left her a great deal of money, and everyone expected her husband to leave it to the papacy, but he left it to her, which was weird. Papacy kind of held its breath to see what she would do with the money. She did the right thing, gave it to the papacy, and joined the convent and turned herself in. The Pope pulled her back out and said, because of your faith and your righteousness, we have a mission for you. And they spent the next this was in 570 AD. They spent the next 100 years. They had her marry. She was 40 years old. They had her marry a 20 or 23-year-old, 24-year-old named Muhammad that was a Persian. And for the next 100 years, they built the story, even after their deaths, of like the Canterbury Tales. They built the pilgrimage of Muhammad around the whole area that he traveled and all the miracles that he did. I mean, the most wealthy organization in the world threw the kitchen sink at his education, travels, and the way that people perceived what he did.
And here's the whole thing. He is supposedly related to the Queen Elizabeth. She has said that she is related to the Prophet Muhammad.
Never heard that. That's awesome.
Well, the reason that's important because they just didn't pluck anybody out. It's like, you know what this is like, ma'am? This is like Mark Zuckerberg, okay? And let me tell you what that means. Mark Zuckerberg is a Rockefeller. Nobody talks about that. He didn't invent Facebook. They gave it to him. It was a Pentagon program called LifeLog. The Facebook movie is propaganda. The twins who were involved were selected and then paid off with $1 billion in Bitcoin. It's all. This is the exact same thing, dude. It is this small group of people. I call them lizard people just because you know who I'm talking about, not that they're literal lizards. Lizard people. Man, this is a great episode, dude. And you're doing great. And this is the connection. Wow.
And now I'd like to finish by pissing off some of the people that are closest to me right now. And I don't mean to, but the truth is the truth. Theodore Herzl was an atheist playwright who was hired by the papacy through their Templars, the Bauer family. Everybody thinks that this whole thing's a Jewish conspiracy, but that in and of itself is a psyop. The Bauer family was not Jewish at all. The Bauer family was given a pseudonym that meant Red Shield, and they basically picked it out of the air off of the sign over the door on their over their accounting.
Are you talking Rothschilds?
The Rothschilds are actually the Bauer family. That's just a cover name for this entire fake Jewish psyop. So, and they own Israel, right? So that's how far this thing has gone. And
yeah,
no
but dude, if you really take a look at it, black nobility owns Israel.
Right.
The Roman Catholic Church supposedly owns like 60% of Israel.
So this is one of my favorite analogies. You remember the movie Weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah.
That is the original Messianic Judaism. That is Bernie. And they're holding it up like a carcass, like a corporation, a corpus in front of all of us with the star of Remphan on the flag.
Danger.
And I mean, you couldn't be more satanic and evil to the Jewish people than that.
Yep, I agree with that. And dude, I try to tell my favorite Jews this. It's just like, dude, Jews are good people. I argue with people all the time. Man, you know I'd love for you to debate is Adam Green, dude. I would love to see you and him bang.
Okay.
Because he's always like, Jewish power. I'm like, dude, it's fucking Jesuits, bro. He's like, Jews. I'm like Jewish power, dude. I'd love, because he doesn't understand that, like, the Roman Catholic Church is like blackmailed the British family. There's also arguments that the British family is a fucking fraud.
Yeah, that there's really a black nobility that I've never even heard of the Savoys and the Habsburgs until the last 3 years, but and they're not even on the list of the 13, on the CIA list of the 13 bloodlines. The CIA was created by the bloodlines through the Knights of Malta. My grandfather was a CIA agent, and his higher up boss was William Donovan, who was a Knight of Malta. He also founded the OSS, and the KGB was founded by the Knights of Malta. And so was the Israeli Mossad just a year after the CIA was
That's
founded.
what people don't get either, man. That's what people
club.
don't get either. It's like, dude, it's not, dude. It's like, I say it all the time. I love Jews. Israelis, all the Israelis I've met, nice people. Same thing with Palestinians, okay? Very nice people. I have problems with governments.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
and like the notion I cannot criticize a foreign government when I criticize my own government is laughable.
Absolutely.
And it's just, and these are the dangerous conversations, man.
It's
These are
almost
the ones.
too late.
What?
It's almost too late for these conversations, you know?
Well, you know what, man? It's interesting stuff, because at the end of the day, what we're really saying is that people are good people, and there's been a manipulation by this one group at the highest levels for the longest time, thousands of years, man.
And we can stop it whenever we want to stop complying in this Disneyland environment with the Disney bucks and all the rides and all the workers. We just need to check the fuck out. Excuse my language.
Hey, dude, I don't know if you know who you're talking to, but I'm Sam motherfucking Tripoli. We talk how we want. Dude, I just listened to Ram Dass, right? Because I'm starting to get into Ram Dass and, Buddhism and Hinduism and all that stuff. And, and he's like talking about how his like religious leader used to be like foul mouthed. And it like shocked me. I'm like, because, this whole notion is like, oh, if you're spiritual, you don't say bad words. I'm like, who said that? And it's like, this guy's Ram Dass, who's like, Duncan Trussell's, I love him with all my heart. He's one of his spiritual leaders. This guy's spiritual leader used to call everybody a sister fucker. And I'm like, oh my God. And it like kind of was like very relieving. I mean, like I kind of got
I don't trust anybody that doesn't cuss a little.
Dude, I don't trust anyone who hasn't done drugs, or it gets weird, okay? And like, especially if they're comics, they've all proved to be shady. Even though some of them are very nice people, they're shady as shit, okay?
Yeah.
All right, dude. I love this. I love this, man. James the what?
James the Just, who was renamed James the Less in the New Testament. But he was the most just man in all of Judea. Everybody agreed that he was the son of Zadok as long as he lived. And,
Zadok. Who is Zadok?
Zadok means righteousness. It's a lot like talking about Jesus being a living person. Zadok was never one individual living person. It was a way of being, a living water balance with natural law. Yes. Being in perfect balance with God's original natural law, which on our money, we're told is chaos. And what this new satanic order is doing by turning upside down God's natural laws and building buildings and putting us in cars and burning gas and teaching us false teachings and eat whatever the hell you want, just watch what you say. The people that are perpetrating this on us, God, I almost lost myself. They don't want us to know about the original better way of living in natural balance with God's law.
What is that, dude? What is the better way of living?
The better way of living is one that it's very much like the Essenes lived. You don't harm animals anymore. You don't need their animal flesh in your stomach. And that's why I can't wait to go into bioweapons with you, because it turns out that this 2,000-year-old teaching about how to stay clean from anything that the adversary throws at you. And I'm not trying to start a religion here. I don't believe in any religion, but I do read a lot. It just so happens serendipitously that this teaching was also the dietary teaching of the gladiators that were the best gladiators on the planet at the time. And it was also it's also the teaching for the naturopaths today that are teaching people with Lyme-like illnesses how to beat these undetectable microbial things that are apparently being sprayed on us from above, according to the Confessions of William Burgdorffer.
So interesting, dude. Okay, so I gotta, because there's people who say that vegetarianism is a psyop.
I don't know. Well, for what I've found through my studies on either end, whether you go 2,000 years ago or they're naturopaths today telling us to deal with bioweapons, is you cannot put animal byproducts in your stomach if you do not want a breeding ground for things that like to destroy flesh, because the flesh you put in your stomach has no oxygenated blood supply and no immune system. So it becomes a perfect incubatory breeding ground for everything the government's weaponizing against us. If you want to remove it from your life and make all those things go into dormancy with no symptoms, you have to remove all dead flesh from your GI tract and make it all plant-based. And then you don't have flesh-based diseases. You only have plant-based goodness going through your system. And I recommend supplements and masticated juicing to fill in the gaps. But I've been doing it for about 4 years, and I would lick somebody with the flu. I'll never even get it. Can't.
All right. Hey, dude, I think you and I got to talk some more. Get into it, dude. So the next one we'll do is bioweapons. All right, dude.
Sure.
I am interested. You crushed it today, dude. Great job.
Thanks,
I really appreciate that you stayed on me. And
thanks for sticking with me when I blew it last week.
No, you didn't, dude. It was just, honestly, it was as much my fault. It probably even more my fault than your fault. So don't worry about that. It was just chaos. So, hey, man, it's all good. You crushed it. And we'll go on again. And then I'm going to stop the show, but I want to talk to you right after. Guys, thanks for tuning in. This has been your Daily Dose. And I appreciate you. And we will talk soon, man. It's crazy. The dangerous conversations today. All right, man. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for listening. Thank you, guys.